Incredible gentleman on the line. His name is Paul Brunson. He is a relationship expert, an entrepreneur, an author, a television host. Oh, so many titles, and he's incredible. A head of global research of Tinder Guys, and named world's most influential matchmaker by the Matchmaking Institute. Welcome to the Who Am I Talk, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's an honor to be here. I see you read the full resume. I appreciate that.
I know everyone has a story, and this is why I created the Who Am I Talk, because everyone has a story. Who is everybody? Where did it start? Where did it end? A lot of the time you see the finished product, you know, the accolades, the awards, the red carpet, but no one really sees what's in between, the work that goes into being who you are as an individual, your upbringing, what shapes you into who you are.
I very much feel as if I'm at the very beginning of my career. Like, I know that I have had almost a 20-year career, but to me, that has all been practice. It's all been rehearsal. And I feel as if the actual game, the actual event has just started, just this year, a matter of fact. I've always felt that way. I've always felt like I was building up to this period, and now I'm starting. So, we should have this conversation in 20 years, because that's when I think I'll have put some real points on the board, thinking about sports analogies. But so I definitely feel as if I'm just starting now, and that's how I approach my career at the moment. But I was born in New York, born and raised in New York. We moved to Northern Virginia, Caribbean household, Jamaican, very loving household, lots of extended family. I had grandparents, actually at one point of time I had both of my grandparents, both sets of grandparents living within maybe 20, 30 minutes of the home. So it was weekends at the grandparents with cousins and aunts and uncles. Being in a Caribbean household, I think if you're not from Caribbean household, you don't fully understand that, we were brought up to feel special and different.
And Oprah, wow. I mean, when we speak about a mogul, a luminary, that's the name that I hear and I think of. And I've watched as a child her career, and she is just incredible. And you're incredible, because I've said this to you at the beginning of our conversation. How did you connect with Oprah? How? What happened? What was the story behind that?
I mean, the full story needs like hours and hours. Yeah. We could do a whole episode just on that. But the short of it is, when my wife and I launched the matchmaking agency, one of our clients was a writer for O Magazine, Oprah's magazine. We didn't know she was a writer for O Magazine. She just told us she was a writer. Now, that was when we were providing pro bono services. So when we launched the matchmaking agency, just to practice the art of matchmaking, to develop a skill, we gave services for free. We advertised, hey, I'll matchmake you, right? For free. Coaching for free. And many people turned us down at that time. Yeah. She was one of maybe 8 at that time who said, sure, I'll take your services for free, if you're going to matchmake me. Now, we never matched her with her, with the husband that she would then marry. But she loved the attention, the work, the hope that we provided. She loved all of that. So that's happening on the side. Then on this side, when we launch our matchmaking agency, we launch a YouTube series called The Modern Day Matchmaker. Okay. And the YouTube series was like just me, just talking about my philosophies on love, right? And we would put this video out every week and would see that we would only get like 11 views from the video. And I promise you, my mother was watching 9 of those 11.
Your family calls.
So it was like, there's maybe only 2-3 other people maybe watching this thing. And it turns out that Oprah was one of the people watching the video. Now, everyone says, how did Oprah find you? How did blah, 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 blah. Well, she found me because going back to this story, this woman who was our client, she was on Oprah's jet one day.
Like you are.
and just hanging out. And Oprah had said, hey, to everyone, on this plane, hey, I have an idea to develop a new show. I'm looking for a fresh voice, a new voice in relationships. Any suggestions? This woman says, have you heard of Paul Brunson? Oprah says, no. They go onto YouTube, find my video. She bookmarks it, and now Oprah's watching. After several weeks, I get an inbox message on Facebook from a woman named Jennifer Duck. And Jennifer Duck works for Oprah Winfrey Network. And that is who invited me to LA. At that time I lived in New York. They invited me to LA. I went, and on the spot in a meeting, I was offered a deal.
Today, I am super excited. I have the most amazing lady on my platform, Karen Millen, Obbe, who's also a friend. I'm very blessed and grateful to share her story. Unless you have not seen anything, you have seen Karen Millen. I remember growing up seeing the stores, and I have some items from Karen Millen, but to know the lady herself and to find out her story is incredible. So I would like to introduce you, Karen Millen, Obbe. Hi, Karen. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know the audience is going to be really excited to hear your story, what's going on in your life. You're involved in charity work, and there's an incredible founder collection that you've just launched. So we're going to start and talk about everything. How did the journey begin?
I think it probably began with a fascination, with fashion, and the fact that from a young girl, I found it a struggle to find fashionable clothes to fit me, because I was always quite small. And, we're going back a long time, I am now, in my early 60s. So, it was really hard finding clothes that were fashionable. And out of frustration, my mum used to actually make clothes for me.
Okay.
And the stores weren't the stores as we know them, from say the 80s, when high streets really began to change. So it was a case of like making my own, or even down to my Cindy dolls. At the time, I'd make them clothes. So I've always been interested. I watched my mum sewing our clothes, obviously, and it was once I got to a point where I was old enough to sit on the sewing machine and make my own, I did. And during school, I was always good at art and quite creative, and I'd always come in dressed with the school uniform slightly changed, and the hair slightly different to what it's supposed to be. So they teachers all knew that there was, a job I should be doing in some kind of creative world.
Yeah, intrinsic detail and classic cuts. See, one thing I've been taught from my mother and my grandmother is that you always got to have a classic piece, and Karen Millen was known for classic. That's what I think some of the young generation don't understand. You have a certain piece, you have a jacket, and you should be able to keep bringing it out generationally, and that's what you was known for. Definitely.
Yeah, I think we're probably known for that even more so now, when people delve back into their wardrobes and are finding pieces that are still relevant today, and they still want to wear it. If they don't fit into them, they're passing them down to their nieces, nephews or daughters. So it's quite fun to see that they're having a second life again.
Absolutely. And that just shows what you created, how classic it is, and how much everybody generationally, we're talking many generations, know Karen Millen. And, I remember when
going 40 years, so that's a long time.
And I remember you said to me what was quite funny, going into a store and looking at what the designs were, and people didn't know. People go, oh, there's an actual individual called Karen. And we're like, yeah, there's a person that created this. So it must have been surreal for you.
People out there that still don't know that, but sometimes it's quite good to be a bit
Yes, definitely.
It's interesting how people perceive it, really. I mean, and it's gone through lots of changes, obviously, over the years. You know, obviously now it's in different hands totally. I mean, we sold it 20 years ago, and it's changed, you know, a few times since then.
You know, you are creative, and I'm a creative. I know how attached I am to anything. How did you overcome that? Because that was a tough time for you.
Well, I think because, you know, it was 20 years of building the company, and 20 years of being with my partner. We met very young. I was 19, he was 20. So we kind of were growing apart from each other. And it made working together more difficult, I think. So after 20 years, I think there was lots of reasons why it felt right to actually sell the company. I mean, we'd been offered, prior to that, we'd had offers to sell it, and we looked at it, went down that route and thought, no, we're not ready. No, we've still got more to do. Let's carry on. And then I think it was in to a consortium of Icelandics, and then 3 years later, 2004, we sold the entirety.
Well, obviously Karen Millen, that was in the 80s, but we are so excited. I screamed when I saw it. You've got a founder collection, which is came out last month and in May 2023, and I am so excited for you. That's like how many years later? And now we're going to see all those iconic pieces. How did that happen? What happened with it?
Well, as I said earlier, I mean, it's gone through a few changes, and the most recent one in 2019, the company was bought out by the Boohoo Group, which instantly closed all of our stores. And I was devastated to think that, you know, the hard work we'd put in to build that had suddenly disappeared overnight. I was like, oh, no, God. You know, it's like, it's the end of, you know, a legacy gone kind of thing. And I thought that would be the death of it. But it hasn't been. So they are online because that's how they operate their business. It's changed a lot, obviously. But when, you know, when that happened, people were saying, you know, well, they're kind of keen to talk to you. Would you be interested? I was like, I don't think so. But the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? Why not? You know?
I'm here with a beautiful lady. Her name is Maverine Cole. She is a journalist, a broadcaster, a reporter, an event host, and so much more. We met, I'd say about 3 weeks ago, and we loved one another. We felt a connection. And I said, I have to get this lovely lady onto my show. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Maverine. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Renee. I'm good, thanks. How are you? It's good to be here.
I want you to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit more about yourself. How did this all begin?
Oh, thanks, Renee. It's really good to be here. I don't do podcasts very often, by the way. So you're a special, you're a very special person to persuade me.
Thank you.
So, gosh, where did it all begin? So I'm from Birmingham. I'm sitting here in my house in Birmingham. Brummie born and bred and proud. Like my mate Alison Hammond, who's also Brummie and proud. When I was a very little girl, I used to watch Sir Trevor MacDonald and Moira Stewart reading the news.
Yes.
And I looked at them and thought, wow, that's really interesting. I love what they're doing. And I was about 7 years old, and it's not often you hear of 7-year-olds watching the news. But in our family, my mum loved being, well versed in what was happening in the world. She would get the local paper through the door every night. She'd read it cover to cover, and then she'd leave it for me and my older brothers to read. And we would always, around tea time, watch the news at 6 o'clock, the local news and the national news. I was never up that often for 10 o'clock, but sometimes I see Sir Trevor at 10 o'clock. So as a family, we consumed the news, we understood what went on in the world, and we would talk about it as a family. So for me, becoming a journalist was just a natural extension of family conversations, but going then to tell people's stories. Crazy. I remember writing tons of letters the year of my 16th birthday to all the local TV and radio stations. I think all bar one offered me work experience. So it was customary to go make the tea, answer the phones, if listeners were calling in, write down the requests, go and pick up, if they had live studio guests, you'd go and pick them up from reception, bring them up and give them a cup of tea in the green room. That was my little job for all sorts of different radio stations for free, right? But I did that because I wanted to see what these places were like. I'd listen to lots of radio, I'd watch TV, but what happens behind the scenes? I was so curious. But then my journey into journalism didn't start until 10 years after I graduated.
Really?
Yeah, because I took my degree in business studies, thought, oh, well, done about journalism, I'm going to put that on the back burner. I'm going to try and get into advertising.
Okay.
Because it was marketing and advertising was an element of my degree. Got into advertising, was a trainee advertising exec for McCann Erickson in the Midlands. Did that for about a year and a half, I think. Didn't enjoy it. And I spent the rest of my 20s being a PA to chief execs and managing directors of different industries. I just kind of gathered those skills. I was good at typing, I could type fast, I was a good organizer, I was a good people person. So I'd arrange meetings and flights for my executives around the world and all that sort of stuff, and conferences. But always at weekends, I would be listening to the radio, trying to work at a radio station. I did little music shows on different stations in the Midlands. And I was like, oh, got to my 30th birthday and I'm thinking, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I really felt like, Renee, that journalism was something I had to do that was like my purpose.
Yeah.
It's a strange feeling. It's like an itch. You just have to scratch.
It's your passion. And no matter, say this, ladies and gentlemen, when it's something that you're supposed to do, there's nothing, you can't stop thinking about it. It's part of who you are. You always knew though, didn't you? That was part of who you was. And as I said, no one knows the journey. They see the end result, you know, everyone sees you on the early morning news, good morning, and they don't realize the transition. But what I love about that, the fact that you was in your 30s and you made that plunge, it shows it's never too late to do anything. It just shows when the time is right, the doors are ready to be opened, it will just happen.
Absolutely. And I think you have to feel in your heart that it's the decision you need to take. But you also have to bet on yourself. I'm very much a believer in, if you don't believe in yourself and your own abilities, who else is going to do that for you? So it was a calculated risk that I took in applying for the course. I applied for the course knowing full well I could not pay for those fees.
But you hedged a bet and it worked out.
Hedged a bet, and then I had to do a second application for the bursary, and I was just like, whatever happens, and it worked out, and it was the best course ever, by the way, surrounded by 20 also wannabe journalists who were hungry, right? We were loving the learning and all the highs and lows. The lows when the work was really hard, we were all crying, and it's like working hours through the night, but we all supported each other immensely, and a lot of people who I studied with are all doing different things.
I am super excited to have with me the most incredible gentleman, Stephen Gray, and the director of a new feature film called After Death. It sounds a bit creepy, doesn't it? But it's actually incredible. And I'm here to talk about his story, to share about this incredible feature film. I'm a Christian woman, so I do believe there is life after death, but it's a mystery. And I'm going to get Stephen to explain all about it, what triggered him to even write and direct this film, and a little bit more about his story. So thank you so much for joining the Who Am I Talk, Stephen. How are you?
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
And I think before we go into this incredible story about the After Death film, I just want to find out a little bit about yourself. You know, what got you into being a director, a writer? Just tell me your story.
So I've been a filmmaker for about 15 years. Most of my work before making this film has been in the commercial space. So doing everything from sort of doing product videos for an RV company to, in Canada here, it's famously the CFL, which is our Canadian Football League. Just a bunch of really kind of cool campaigns for brands kind of all around the world as well. But in 2012, my brother-in-law, Marco, he was 36 years old, and he was actually killed in a car wreck. and it's my wife's only sibling, and they're an immigrant family from Croatia. So, very tight-knit family of four, now is three. And then a year and a half later, my father-in-law also died. So, this family of four becomes a family of two all of a sudden. And that just kind of caused me to ask questions about, is there something after or not?
Yeah.
So I actually grew up going to church all my life. I went to a Pentecostal church and then eventually a Baptist church. So kind of a full spectrum of the Christian faith.
Oh, yeah.
But in 2012, if I'm honest, I lost my faith. I wasn't sure that I really could believe that there's a God. So it's just kind of chaos around me in my life at that time. So it kind of let that idea go. But then I had heard of these stories of people who had clinically died and had these experiences and then came back. And it's very intriguing. And I wanted to know more, and so part of me was just kind of like, deeply asking that question. I wanted to know, for me, is my brother-in-law still around? Is he, where is he, right? Was he experiencing? And so that's what started this whole journey, and I've been working on this film for a little bit over 6 years now. It's a long process, but finally we're here with the feature film After Death playing in theaters.
What I had a look, I went on to Angel Studios. It's basically a production house, isn't it? And they had loads of streaming videos talking about the experiences and talking about what people have gone through. And what was really incredible was when the doctors and neurosurgeons were saying they can't have not known what was happening because they were unconscious, but they were talking about private conversations that were happening. Yeah. It's like, wow. So how they must have been there to have, if you're going to be on an operating table and then next minute you're listening to, it blew my mind. Like, that's what I imagine.
Yeah, like, and that was the kind of the hook for us was, how much evidence is there? Anecdotally, there's the stories, but so we have Dr. Carl Green in the film, who was present during this operation with Pam Reynolds, which is kind of a bit of a famous near-death experience case because it's studied all around the world. It's hard to kind of come up with alternate explanations for what her experience was, but essentially her brain was completely offline. The blood was removed from her brain because they were doing a lower brainstem surgery to remove an aneurysm, which was at that time a little experimental. This is the early 90s. I think Spetzer had done, I want to say like 2 or 3 successful surgeries at this point, something like that. And but it's a very complicated, almost like sounds like science fiction surgery, because they purposely kill her for over an hour. Her heart stops. They remove all the blood from her brain. Her eyes are taped shut, and she has these things kind of like have the earpods in my ear here. She has these things in her ears that are emitting, I think it's a 90 decibel clicks that basically kind of transfer from one ear to the other, that are it's a sensor to read that the brain is completely offline. If her brain was online, let's just say hypothetically, she would have permanent hearing loss from the clicks. But they're monitoring the brain activity. It has to be offline for them to continue the procedure. And when they successfully got her to that point, to that state, that's when she has what this out-of-body experience is, what it's called. So her next kind of conscious memory is basically kind of from the perspective of over the shoulder of the surgeon who is now opening her head. And she recognizes that's her down there. She's not alarmed. She feels great. She feels at peace. And angels enter the room. They usher her up towards heaven. But before she goes there and comes back, she's seeing details during the surgery that can later be corroborated. There's 2 neurosurgeons that are present, which can also talk about and corroborate this story. And they don't honestly know what to say of it. They don't know what to make of it, because this is when her brain is offline. And again, there's no blood in her brain. So her brain materially is not able to kind of create new memory while they're doing a very complicated surgery. She's seeing things like the tool that she describes, the bone saw, which looked like to her an electric toothbrush. She had nothing to kind of, connect it to. So she figures it's got to be something similar to that. She sees the tool set from the bone saw, which to her reminded her of her dad's socket wrench set. She sees that they have complications with one leg where the blood's kind of draining in and out of her lower part of her body, and her vein was cannulated, so they were arguing about it and had to switch to the other leg. She talks about how she thought it was really insensitive that they were playing this song in the operating theater called Hotel California. She thought, the lyrics are so, I don't want to be stuck here forever. She thought that was just really, that it was just insensitive. So she brings all this stuff up, including arguments that they had during the operation. And the neurosurgeons don't know what to make of it. They go back and look at the medical transcripts because they're thinking they're going to get sued. This is medical malpractice. Maybe they did. And maybe they did perform the surgery and her brain was online. Obviously it had to be. And so they check and it was completely offline. So it's just like, how on earth is that possible?
And this one's going to be quite powerful. I hope it blesses a lot of people who are listening. I stumbled over this lovely lady who I'm about to introduce when I was literally just surfing the YouTube. I was just like listening to people's stories, and I do research for guests. And when I heard her testimony, it was just incredible. Being in the music industry, knowing people in entertainment, and there's a lot going on in the press right now, or just in the media, about that stirring of souls, what's going on in entertainment. So she's had her first hand encounter of certain things that do happen in the industry. And she made a choice, and her choice was to move away from that and go towards God. And I'm really, really blessed to have her on my show. Christina Cheney, lovely to meet you.
Hello. Lovely to meet you.
I want to find out, who are you? What's the start of your journey? Tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, your upbringing.
Sure. So my name's Christina. I'm originally from Yonkers, New York. I, like you, Renee, grew up in a Pentecostal household. We were in church all the time. My parents served faithfully. I felt like I lived in church, and that was just my upbringing. And as I got older and got more exposed to the world and discovered my talents, my parents invested a great deal of time and money into dance classes, vocal lessons, theater lessons. I just loved it, and they saw that. And so, of course, I did serve in the youth dance group and the choir and all those things, and kind of experienced my own, I would say, church hurt, and trying to minimize the little things here and there. I had dreams and ambitions, but it was very much shunned in the church.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't wait to turn 18 so that I could really use my gifts for the world, because I thought that church was a way you proved your service for God, like just church and what the church says. And I thought church was very restricting, so I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah.
And so when I turned 18, I surely did do it my way.
Mhm.
And I would just happen to meet people in the industry. I happened to meet people that were producers and songwriters and managers, and it just happened. I was also in those environments, like the clubs. I was underage partying. I danced for I danced for the Florida Marlins, which is a baseball team here in Florida. And danced for the New York Knicks. So I was in that environment where these celebrities and music producers artists go. So that's how I met a lot of them, and just got my footing there by writing songs for local artists, new producers, which eventually got me in the door with big producers, big managers. And that's kind of how I got my footing in the world and out of the church.
People are listening and hearing our conversation, and I can hear them chattering already and questioning. You went into it and you met certain producers. Was there anything in particular, or a moment that triggered you to think, hold on, there's something's off here? What in particular? Yeah, or any instances as opposed to maybe one instance?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that comes to mind initially is I was in a session one time, and the producer, who is a renowned producer, he worked with Michael Jackson, Darkchild, Brandy, some big names.
Wow.
And he took me on the walk around the studio. We're taking a break. Very nice guy, nice family guy. Took me around the studio and was like, "Hey, so the industry's real dark. If you sell your soul to the devil, you can have instant fame tomorrow." He said this to me. And when he said this, first of all, even leading up to it, I was like, this is real? I thought that was conspiracy theory.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like, they really do this? And so he said, if you sell your soul, you can have fame tomorrow. And it was, I kid you not, I get goosebumps thinking about it, because it was as if a power entered the room, because I fell to my knees and he fell. There was like a chair. We kind of stopped in the studio walking, and there was a chair, and he sat down on the chair. And I just started, Lord, no, forgive me. I don't want to forgive me, Lord, forgive me, just forgive me.
Wow.
I want you. I just had a moment of just repentance, you know? And I don't know how long I was on the floor, but I look up, kind of embarrassed that I just was in front of this man.
Of course.
And he was sitting down with his head bowed, like he knew what happened too.
Yeah.
And when he asked me that question though, Renee, it was almost like he wanted me to do it so that he can get his career off. Because something happened he probably had a falling out with a producer that kind of blackballed him a little bit. So he wanted to get his name back up. And I was a new artist. I'm young. I'm like 21. And I'm like, I knew that he was almost like wanting me to do it because I'm young and naive. I don't know. Just go ahead and sell my soul. What does that mean? I don't know. But I had an upbringing in the Lord, and I had an angel guarding me, you know. So there was that experience, and I didn't turn away immediately. It was like, you know, tethering that line of, you know, light and darkness for quite a while. But that was my first hearing it from the horse's mouth. You've been in these rooms, you've seen this. You haven't done it yourself because you're also a church upbringing person yourself. But you're thinking that maybe if I do it, that'll help jumpstart your career, whatever. But you're not selling your soul. I am.